So let's look at the part B of telephone call. We've dealt with part A, the 15 marks, all done. Now we want to deal with the 5 marks questions. And let's go into it quickly. Push Coal is a chemical company. One of its processes requires input material to be split into two intermediate products, IA and IB. So if we draw that, I like that pictorial representation. Let's see. So you have a process, a joint process. So this is a joint process. That joint process can produce IA and IB. IA and IB. Remember that you cannot produce either IA or IB because this is a joint process. And you can have a flashback into your management accounting process, right? Once you have a joint process, it means that once that single process is happening, it is producing more than one product. And that's an example of what you're having here. So there is no option to produce either IA or IB. Both IA and IB must be produced once we decide to run this joint process. Let's keep reading. This could be sold for 6,000 and 8,000 respectively. That is one option. Selling IA for 6K and IB for 8K. So this is for $6K and this can be sold for $8K. That's option 1. Option 2 is or it can be processed further to final products FA and FB. So we have the other option to further process. So we can push further to FA or final product B. The final products could be sold for 11,000 and 10,000 respectively. So FA can be sold for 11,000 and FB can be sold for 10,000. The further processing cost is 4,000 for each product. So to move from IA to FA, we need to spend additional $4,000. And the same thing is applicable to IB to FB. So pictorially, this is the situation we have. The decision is, should we further process IA and IB to FA and FB? Because there is no decision to take whether to produce IA or IB. We have to produce IA and IB, except we don't want to undergo this process at all. That is the only option. So let's look at the question. The question wants us to decide what should the company do if the input material costs 12,000. That's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is if the input material costs 16,000. Remember, the input material will be at the joint process level. So, the first thing we need to find out is, should we even further process? So that we'll know where to stop. Whether to further process, we've already said that our decision criteria must be that the extra revenue that we are getting from further processing is more than the extra cost that we will incur. So that is what we need to check for this scenario. So for both IA and IB, we need to be asking ourselves, what is the extra revenue and what is the extra cost? We need to check all of that. Extra revenue and extra cost. And when we know all of that, then we'll be able to decide whether it makes sense to further process or not. So for IA, we'll be able to sell IA as it is for 6,000. However, if we decide to further process to FA, we'll be able to sell it for 11,000. And in that case, it means that we have extra revenue from IA of 11,000 minus 6,000. And that is 5,000. And likewise, if we decide to further process IB to FB, instead of selling it for 8,000, we'll be able to sell it for $10,000. So in that case, the extra revenue will be 2,000. So we have this information already on extra revenue, but that is not even sufficient because we need to find out what is the extra cost and we can apply our decision criteria. Extra cost for each of them is 4,000 flat. So each of them will cost 4,000 to further process. And with this, we can find out what's our net position. Is it profit or loss? So for IA, we'll be making extra $1,000. And for IB, we'll be making a loss of minus 2,000. So we already know that for this situation, for IA, further process because it gives us extra benefit. And for IB, don't process further. So which means sell IB. That's what we're saying, is IB will be selling. But for IA, we'll be selling FA. So that's what we're saying, because we'll further process it. So you'll be selling FA and not IA because we would have further processed it. So that is the initial decision that we have taken on this scenario. But now we need to now answer the question further. So we've done the testing and we realize that IA is good to further process, but IB, we cannot further process it. Now, let's look at the question. What should the company do if the input material is 12,000? So scenario 1. If input material is 12,000, is it profitable for the company? Let's find out. What's our revenue? So the total revenue will be coming from the sale of FA. Remember? So that will be sale of FA and IB because IB will not be further processed. And the price to sell FA is 11,000. Yeah. And to sell IB is 8,000. So that's total revenue of 11,000 plus 8,000. Plus 8,000. So we have a total revenue of 19,000. And for us to be able to sell those products at those stages, we will incur costs as well. So which means we'll be incurring cost. Let's put our total cost, which is the joint cost and the extra cost to process IA further, because we're processing IA further. Okay. And if you look at that, you see that the joint cost is the scenario that we're playing with, which is the material. Yeah, joint cost at 12,000 according to the question. That's the material cost. So which means we have total cost of 12,000 plus the extra 4,000 to process IA further. And in that case, we have a net position of 19,000 revenue minus 16,000 cost. And that is 3,000. And that looks good. So for this one, what should the company do? It's no brainer. We're going to tell them to go ahead and produce. So tell them to sell IB at joint separation stage. So don't process further. and FA, which is a further processed IA. So it's a good thing to do. That's what we're telling them. They should go ahead and further process IA, but not IB. Scenario 2, which means, let's use the same template. So we'll just copy it and I'll put it here. So for scenario 2, the joint cost is now 16,000. Yeah. The revenue will be the same. Yeah, because that is the ultimate decision. This is what makes sense to sell. Whereas, let's see, with this, what to sell, what does the cost come to? The joint cost will be different. It's no more 12,000. It becomes 16,000 because that's the scenario we're giving. And we're still processing IA further for 4,000. So the total cost becomes 20,000. And our net position now comes to a loss position. And this is not good for the business. So for this one, it doesn't even make sense to produce anything. So in this situation, the company should not process any products. So what we're saying is that both joint process and further process should be avoided because there is no scenario where we can be profitable. And that is it for this question. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So the emphasis I'm going to put here again is, please note that for joint process, you cannot decide to produce one product or the other because a joint process will produce the two products at the same time. You can't separate it. So please take note of that. And also, you always have to do your initial assessment to know what product will make sense to process further, just like we did in this scenario where we know that you shouldn't bother processing this guy further. The ultimate decision, first of all, is to further process FA, IA to FA, and sell IB at the joint separation. Then you can now consider your initial cost to see whether the whole process will make sense to the company. That is it for 5 marks. Yeah, if you have any question, remember to always reach out. Yeah, continue to enjoy the videos. We'll keep going. Next class, we'll be starting a new topic, which is on limiting factor. Bye for now.